What is up, everybody? I don't even know who's out there, but anyone who's out there, welcome to the Headhunter Hideout Special Edition, the midweek edition. And I am excited to have Andy Storch with us. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Storch, you got it.
Storch.
You got it. Okay. Headhunter Hangout. I'm excited.
The Headhunter Hideout. Yeah, it's pretty. Hangout would probably work out too. Depends how laid back the guest is. But yeah, Andy, he just released a book, and it's called Own Your Life. Own Your Career, Own Your Life. There we go. And guess what? I didn't tell him this, but I've got 2 copies.
Oh,
so, dude, I was waiting to let you know that. But yeah, I briefly. What's that?
Did you get the one I sent to you, or did you buy those?
Yeah. No, these are the 2 that you sent me.
Oh, that's right. I gave you an extra one.
You did. So I will. I'm gonna really think about who I give the book to, because I feel like it's gonna really disrupt someone's life.
I like it.
In a good way. A good way. So yeah, we were chatting offline before, and we got connected through Adam Posner, and I think you did the podcast, and I listened to you on that, and you talking about like Talent Summit that you the conference that you run
back in January, and then a Talent Development Virtual Summit this year after that. I'm going back on Adam's show in a few weeks, but yeah, man, he's and another. You and I were talking right before we started recording about all the friends we've made through LinkedIn, and people don't take it, they don't realize that it's not just about finding jobs or spamming or selling people. Like, you can make a lot of real friends on here. And Adam is one of those that I've had the benefit of meeting in real life. And there's been so many others, which is really great.
And we got Nick Lozano says, what's going on, fellas? He's got a pretty cool new profile picture, which I shouted out. So do you know Nick, just out of curiosity?
I don't think I do know Nick.
Man, you guys got to connect.
I hope he's not going to be like, hey, we know each other.
He's like, wait, we've been connected for 10 years. How do we not know each other? It's so true though, man. And I briefly skimmed through the book. Obviously, I just got it yesterday, so I'm excited to dig into it. But I did notice there was a section about LinkedIn and like networking with people, which is really cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey, in terms of LinkedIn in particular, but then obviously, really kind of what inspired you to write the book, and who you're looking to impact with it.
Yeah, cool. Well, my life and career has been quite a journey, ups and downs and meanders all over the place, like it has been for a lot of people. I grew up here in Florida, where I am. I moved to California for a while, went to grad school out there, and I got into corporate consulting about 9 years ago. And that really opened my eyes and broadened my horizons. I got to work with people executives from different companies, different industries, and travel all over the world. And I had probably been on LinkedIn since the beginning, going back to college, but it was more of like a resume, put your resume here, and that's kind of it, maybe connect with some people. But about, I started getting a little bit more serious when I was in consulting, and realized I wanted, and I got more into the sales side of that I wanted to use it to go connect with prospective clients. And I took some classes, started learning as much as I could about ways to go out and find your ideal prospective clients and connect with the right people, and started using it that way. But I wasn't creating any kind of content until about 3 years ago, when I left that company to go become an independent consultant. And I wanted to start building a brand. I had started a couple of podcasts. One of them was the Talent Development Hot Seat, which is all about corporate talent development. And I was using that to build my network in the talent development space where I was working. And my main business essentially was selling and running training and development programs, leadership development workshops, things like that. And so I wanted to connect with prospective clients. So I started connecting with more people on LinkedIn. And then I started creating content. I don't know where that decision came from, but that I'm going to start creating content. I'm going to do it consistently. And I started doing that, 5 days a week, putting content out there. I remember it was really, really slow in the beginning, with like nobody liking your comment, no engagement whatsoever. And still, I would talk to clients or prospects, and they'd say, I see it all over LinkedIn, right? They'd be like, I see it. So I'm like, okay, I got to just keep going. And then I just started getting really serious about the way I was connecting with people, both prospective clients and just people that I thought would make great friends or allies, or, people like you that are like, you and I are not in the same space. We're not necessarily each other's potential clients, but we could so benefit from knowing each other and building a real relationship. And I started making a lot of great friends that way, and building the business and the brand and the podcast. And along the way, doing all this corporate work, I noticed a lot of people tend to be kind of drifting through life and through their careers, operating in reaction mode, waiting for that opportunity to come their way, waiting for their manager to offer them a promotion or something, waiting for a great headhunter like Joel to call them and be like, hey, I got this great opportunity for you, right? Kind of waiting to be discovered, rather than taking the initiative and getting really specific on where they want to go, where you want to go with your career, and taking action towards that and really setting themselves up for future success. And I get questions all the time about networking. How did you build such a network? How did you build such a personal brand? And I feel like most of the advice out there was for entrepreneurs. And I wanted to create something that was for corporate professionals that can be used in the corporate setting that said, hey, look, I'm an entrepreneur because I love running my own business, but that is not for everybody. Most people are very happy to be working for others, working for a company. They just want to be happy and fulfilled in their career. And I wanted to give them a resource to be able to do that, which is why I wrote this book, Own Your Career, Own Your Life, which just came out yesterday, November 16th. And it's available on Amazon. And I'm really pumped about all the feedback I'm getting, and support from friends has been awesome.
Man, there's a lot, a ton there. I do just want to touch upon a couple of comments too here. So Thurston just says, LinkedIn is genuine. Nick said he's going to send you a request. He also used to live in Orlando. You guys were actually neighbors.
Hey, I was just saying this on another interview, like rule number one, when you're trying to connect with someone, try to find that point of commonality, right? You used to live in Orlando. I'm in Orlando. Boom. All right, cool. Let's connect.
Hey, couldn't agree more. And we got Marilyn too. Just says, hello guys. Andy, you're on point. I'd love to start my own HR.
Do it, Marilyn. Do it. Start it on the side.
Marilyn, first of all, you got to pick up the book and follow Andy too, because I think we were talking about this before we just kind of touch upon some of the stuff you were saying. I think one of the big advantages of networking with different people, whether they're leaders in a company or they're entrepreneurs, is a lot of us, we kind of get a closed mindset. And like you said, it's really easy to just get into the rhythm of this is my career. This is what things are going to look like. And I think perhaps this year, just the way it's gone has shaken up a lot of that, and things that were once really steady have been shaken. And that can be a good thing in terms of just questioning, like, am I on the right path? But I one of the things that I am really curious about is, like, you said that you kind of just started putting out the content. Like, do you know, like, what inspired you, or like who inspired you to do that? Or like, how did that come about? Because to me, it's kind of crazy that you just started doing it.
Well, everybody has to start sometime, right? You just start. It's a good question. I don't remember what the first inspiration was that, like, hey, I'm going to start creating. I do know, I will say this. I had already started a podcast. I had already been creating a lot of content on Facebook and a little bit on Instagram, and realizing, hey, I'm in B2B. I should probably be creating content on LinkedIn because that's where my clients are. So there was motivation there that I need to do that to start to build my brand in that space as I was learning more about personal branding and everything else. And I started following other people to see, what they're doing. I think my first friend, who was an in real life friend who was creating a lot of content on LinkedIn and inspired me, was a guy named Liston Witherill, who's a sales trainer up in Oregon. I started watching him and learning from him and talking to him. And then he invited me to my first LinkedIn pod, engagement pod, who was like, hey, I'm putting this pod together of content creators. You want to be in there? And then I was with like these 5 people, one of whom really blew up and is huge today. I don't know if you follow Shay Rowbottom on LinkedIn, but she was in that first pod. And I watched all these people there, and they're like making videos and stuff. And I'm like, I got to step up my game. These people are like all stars. And I'm just like trying to put together a couple textbooks. So I started making videos and trying different stuff. And then it's kind of grown from there. And never have I really like taken off. I don't have the following or the engagement that maybe you do, Joel, or some other people do. But what I do is, and you mentioned mindset earlier and having that like scarce mindset or closed mindset. I'm a big fan of having a growth mindset. I have a whole chapter dedicated to my book. If you haven't read that, first of all, read my book and it's all there. But if you want to go deeper, that's from the book Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, which is a big inspiration on me. And basically she says, people either have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. Fixed mindset says, hey, you're either good at something or you're not. If you try something and you fail, then you're a failure and you probably shouldn't do it anymore. Growth mindset is you can always get better at anything. There is no such thing as failure. Everything is learning. So I just watch what all these, people are doing on LinkedIn and what's working, what's not. Watch someone like you, Joel, and they're like, oh, he just did that post. Wow, that seems to be working really well. Let me see what I can learn from him. And then I'll try that. I'll try to do a slideshow. Yeah. I'll try to do a video. I'll try to do this and that. And just keep trying things. And one day you wake up and you're the person that people are like, how do you do that? How do you add subtitles to the bottom of your video, or how do you add those headlines, or how do you do this thing and that thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just watching other people, Googling it and trying it and asking people for help, and just keep growing from there. And I think that can be true for anything. Like if you want to start a podcast, if you want to write a book, my step one is learn from other people. Don't try to make it all up yourself, right? Invest in a course, follow people on social media, read a book, buy a book, listen to a podcast. Step two, try stuff, set goals, take some action, try some things, and then keep adjusting as you go. And if you head that way with a growth mindset, there's really no way to fail as long as you're trying stuff, because there's no failure. There's only learning and growth. You'll always keep learning and growing and moving forward.
I think, I see this a lot too. Obviously, a lot of, I think with the pandemic in particular, a lot of people are switching more to the digital mindset and seeing a lot of the value. And I think what's cool is, even with writing the book, like there's millions of books out there, but that doesn't stop you from writing your own book. And I think, back when you started a podcast, I think you were one of the first people, or at least you were ahead of the trend, like the popular trend, that I see with podcasts. But I think, like you said, it's like you've got to start from somewhere and you got to take that action. Yeah. And I know for myself, a year and a half ago, and just starting to produce content, the first thing that happened was I realized a lot of what I was doing was just helping me in my actual career and helping me take ownership, helping me be more proactive. And I just felt like I was tapping into skills which were going to be helpful in the future. Like writing is obviously a great skill. Yep. I think interviewing and getting to know people and networking is a great skill. And podcasting, I just talked to someone today and said, maybe you should consider starting a podcast to connect with people on a different level. Yeah. And as long as you're passionate about what you're actually starting the podcast for, and not just starting it as a business development tool, it is a great way to connect with people. And I think LinkedIn's the same way. I learn a lot from people like yourself in terms of, because I hear this a lot, like engagement numbers compared to the quality of content. But I think where you're really skilled at, and one of your big skills is being able to take the engagement that you have and like turning into really meaningful relationships that turn into business, that turn into real connections. And I think what can be misleading for people is, like you said at the beginning, like when you're starting, you might not get the engagement or you might not get like these huge numbers, but the real skill, to be honest, is, it's easy if you're getting 500,000 views. Obviously, you're going to get business leads from that, depending on what you're selling. But the real skill is being able to take the small amount of engagement and turn it into something really meaningful and a really meaningful connection. So I'm curious, like, what advice would you give to people in terms of, just being able to network in that meaningful way? And like, how do you build those meaningful connections that maybe aren't within your target market? And like, how do you approach those kind of connections?
Well, the first thing is having that mindset that I am here to make connections and build relationships. I'm not here to build a following or, just have people like my stuff. So I'm always connecting with people, trying to get to know them. It's hard to do at scale, right? There's a lot of people I'm connected with that I don't know that well. But I've made so many great friends and relationships through LinkedIn, Facebook, social media in general. It's getting curious. It's getting to know people, asking them about, and realizing too that you don't need a huge following to build a brand and build a business, right? Like, just before you and I started recording, you said, I don't know how many people are going to join this live today. And I said, I don't care if one person comes on and they get value and they buy my book and it impacts their life, then I'm happy with that. Like, that's awesome. I don't need 500,000. It's one relationship at a time. And you mentioned the podcast. Podcasting has been huge for me. I started my first podcast in 2017. And at that time, I think there were probably 500,000 podcasts, and it felt like, oh, it's way too late. Today, there's probably I think there's 1 million podcasts today out there, and it's still not too late. There's still plenty of opportunities. A lot of those people are quitting every day too. There's plenty of opportunity for new podcasts, but I leverage those podcasts to build so many relationships with people that I would not normally get to talk to. I mean, just today, perfect example, a best-selling author I connected with named Lindsay Pollack, who has 2 New York Times best-selling books, traditionally published. I think I first reached out to her to have her on my podcast, not knowing if she would even say yes. We built a relationship. I had her on my virtual summit that I hosted in September. Fast forward to today, she supported the launch of my book. She endorsed my book. She posted about it on LinkedIn. And then she just emailed me this morning and complimented me on the launch and asked if I would endorse her next book. And
super cool.
All comes from reaching out on LinkedIn, asking to interview her on my podcast. And I've done this with many, many other people, building that relationship. We've become friends. We support each other. And, now I'm associated with some amazing people because I had a platform. And the podcast, by the way, that the reason that works so well is you've got a platform and you're able to give value to someone else right away. So, Joel and I, if we don't know each other very well, and he just, someone randomly reaches out and says, can we talk? And I'm like, I'm kind of busy. If you say, hey, can we talk? And I'd love to have you on my podcast. I'm like, yeah, sure. Because now you're giving me a platform to share my story, especially to market my book. But most people don't have a platform, don't know how to start a podcast or anything like that. Don't know how to build a brand. So you're giving them an opportunity to share their story, share their wisdom, share their expertise, because everybody has some of that, right?
Yeah.
And so they're going to take advantage of that. And then you get on Zoom or you get on video and you start talking, you get curious and you build a relationship. And I've done that dozens and dozens and dozens of times with, especially the Talent Development Podcast and Talent Development Hot Seat. I found clients, made so many friends from that. And it's just about, connecting with people, getting them on video, getting personal, getting curious, asking questions, and then following up and looking for more opportunities to give value to them. And often I find, whether you believe in karma or not, they want to help you too.
100%. Yeah, I love that. And I think I found that same thing with this live stream. I go Monday and Friday, usually with recruitment leaders or recruitment, people who own recruitment agencies, which is now kind of within my target market. But it's so funny. It's like there's been plenty of people who've had in the show that haven't ended up as being clients or necessarily anything kind of that expands my business. But either way, whenever you're connecting with different people, you learn. And so I think having that curious mindset, having that wanting to learn. And I know I was talking to someone yesterday who's younger in their career, and they're like, man, how do I take conversations offline? And I said, position yourself as someone that wants to learn and ask people who are more experienced to, if they've got time to spend on you and mentor. And I said, not everybody's going to be open for that, but you will find that people are open. And I think a lot of times on LinkedIn, it's a similar thing. It's not going for the kill shot right away and just playing the numbers game with like who could be a bad client or a good client and just going with numbers and spamming people. But I think there's a way to get really strategic to where you become referrals. So for example, if I'm a well-known recruiter and I start connecting with people who are outside my market, they're going to hear about needs within the recruitment world. And the first person they're going to think about, or one of the top people they're going to think about, is me, because I've been proactive in connecting. And so I'm curious, like, how do you balance like the motive of like just wanting to grow business and genuinely getting to know people? Like, is that something that you innately have, or is that something that you need to kind of foster within yourself? Like, how do you grow that curiosity?
No, I struggle with that, to be honest. And this may surprise you or some people. I struggle with it on a different end than other people might struggle with it. My goal is to be friends with all of my clients and really be friends with everybody. And so I'm leading with that. I'm leading with curiosity and relationship and trying to get to know people and really become friends with them. And almost to the detriment of my business because I forget to ask for business or ask for money, right? I'm not going in for that kill, like so many people are going in right away, buy this or whatever. I'm trying to get on Zoom and build a relationship with people. And I need to get better at turning a lot of those people into clients because a lot of them are supporters of me and helpful. And it's worked out well when I do something like this, like a book launch, because so many people are supporting me. And I have built a business that, I'm running my own business and it sustains me and everything else. It's great. I've got a lot of good things going on. But that's one of those areas where I could definitely improve because I am so relationship oriented that I have a hard time sometimes saying like, hey, pay me, right? Like pay me for what I'm doing. But I'm moving more in that direction and I'm realizing, one of the things this book is about is the importance of self-awareness, getting to know your strengths, your weaknesses, your energizers, your values, your purpose. And I realize that I am very much a community builder. I'm a connector. I like bringing people together. And so one of the ways I've started to even look to monetize my strength in connecting is I was just telling you right before we started recording that I make so many great connections and I have a lot of connections with people in talent development in big companies. And I also have a lot of friends who are solution providers, thought leaders, trainers, that kind of thing. Is I'm starting to make those introductions and connections and just have affiliate arrangements with a lot of people who just say, hey, if you send a client my way, I'll give you 20% or 40% or whatever to be able to make money that way. And I'm doing it in a very trusting, authentic way. I'm only making introductions if I think it's going to be mutually beneficial, that kind of thing. And then building communities as well. I launched a community for talent development professionals called the Talent Development Think Tank, and people pay a monthly fee to be in that. I'm going to be doing the same thing with this book to people that want to take ownership of their careers, the Own Your Career, Own Your Life community. And finding more ways to monetize, if you will, my strengths so that I'm not trying to force myself to do other things that make me uncomfortable.
I love that, man. Well, let's go back to some, man, we got a lot of comments here too. So let's see. Yeah, it's super cool. So let's see. I just love to pick this. So Nick just said it's a slow process. The great thing about a small following is that you can engage with more of your connections.
Right.
And I think that, I mean, obviously, like if you have millions of connections or followers, you do lose that touch, which is interestingly enough, on LinkedIn, what I've noticed recently is people with bigger followings, they typically have like worse engagement because it's so hard to cater to more people. But if you're very specific in who you're connecting with and who your target audience is, obviously the content is going to be more relevant to them than if you spread out. So I've been seeing that a lot. And then Nick also said, on point, Andy, there's lots of opportunity on podcasting. Yeah. So I know Nick has a podcast too. Mitcher says hi.
Yeah, Nick, trying to market this book over here. Give me a shout, Nick.
Dude, and I think and so I'm curious too with the book. Obviously, you're on Amazon too. I'm curious, like what was it kind of spurred on with the pandemic that kind of made you want to come out with the book quicker, or like what was that timeline like? Like how long has it been since you wanted to actually write?
It's been really interesting. And by the way, I like to think of myself as a connector. People think of me that way. It comes out in the book as well. You read through the book, almost every lesson I give, I refer to other people that I learned from. I mentioned so many other books and podcasts and things in there because I've learned so much from so many friends and mentors along the way. And I didn't make this stuff up. I just brought it all together in one place and practiced it, figured out what worked and what didn't. And then I'm sharing that advice with people who want to get this book and read it. Thurston had a question. Is it on audiobook? It is not on audiobook yet. I'm working on it. A lot of time and effort to go into that.
Yeah. How does that work? Do you do that in your own voice, or you got to hire someone? Do you need a voice guy like me?
You can do it either way. There's a lot of voice actors out there in areas you can hire, and they will either pay them a fee, or some will even do it on like a commission where basically they would do it for free and then you split the profits on the audiobook. I have so many stories from my own life in this book, and I'm a podcaster. I feel like I need to do it. Like I can't.
You got to do it.
So it's really just making the time, because it's going to take, 10 hours or something collectively to put this thing together. I'll hire an editor. I'm not going to edit myself. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. I've actually done about half of it. So I'll get that done. I personally don't listen to audiobooks, but I know a lot of people only listen to audiobooks. And so I got to cater to them, which is also a lesson I learned. It took a long time for me to learn, Joel, on creating content, that I think we tend to create content the way that we consume, forgetting that other people consume content different ways, right? Podcasts, blogs, videos, YouTube. Like I don't go on YouTube at all, but lots of people watch YouTube all day long. So I need to have, I need to do a better job of creating a YouTube channel or whatever it is, right? We've got to keep that in mind. But you were asking about the timeline. I got the idea for this book 1 year ago while I was at a conference in London called the Youpreneur Summit, which is all about building a personal brand, hosted by Chris Ducker in London, November 2019. I ran it by a few people. I went back and grabbed the outlines from a couple talks I gave at conferences, HR conferences in 2019, and it was perfectly fit into what I wanted to write for the book. I started writing the book on January 1st, and I set a goal, a habit. So in my book, I talk a lot about how to achieve big goals and how it's important to get really specific and break them down into habits. So I heard that the average business book was about 50,000 words. And so based on the advice from a mentor, I set the goal or the habit that I would write 500 words a day for 100 days to get to 50,000 words. I ended up doing that. I wrote 500 words a day, 7 days a week for about 3.5 months, and ended at like 65,000 words or something like that. And then I had plenty of room to kind of cut later. As far as the pandemic, back in January, I hosted a conference. I was going to a lot of conferences. I was writing in the book about networking and how you need to go to networking events and conferences and things like that. COVID hit and changed that. It also completely changed my business. My whole business was selling and running in-person training workshops. I was on planes every week, flying around the country and the world, running workshops, and I had to change everything. This has been the best year of my life because I've pivoted into more things that I wanted to do. But I also needed to shift the book as well. So I had an opportunity to go back and rewrite some of the sections, especially the chapters on networking, and talk about how do you build a network in a virtual or remote working world. So I worked all of that in there because I think it's really important. A lot of people make excuses, say like, oh, I can't, walk around the office and talk to people anymore. I can't go to the conference anymore. You just got to get a lot more intentional with how you do it. And LinkedIn is the place to be, right? So I write all about that. And then from there, it kind of lagged a little bit. I hired an editor. I had to go through some reviews. I cut some stuff from the third part of the book. But then, kind of stayed on track. Early on, I think I was talking about September, but then I decided to host a virtual summit in September, and that took a lot of my time. So I pushed the launch back to November, and the timing just feels so perfect and so right to get this book out there now. People can get it for Christmas or holidays or whatever you want to do and have it in your hands ready for you to make your plans for 2021 and make that the best year of your life.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I think, for someone mentioned it too, they're just like nice conversion and pivot. And, I think that's why a book like this is so important, because one of the things that really stands out to me is just even on the front cover where it just says own life. And I think sometimes we can even just forget the fact that like we have choices with things. And I think we touched upon it earlier, but there's such a difference between living intentionally and then just drifting through life. Mm-hmm. I'm curious with like your own journey. Was there a point that you really felt like did you always feel like you kind of were in control of everything and that you were making decisions, or was there like a turning point or some point where you were like, you know what, I really feel like I need to literally own my life at this point and start making decisions? Yeah. Like, was there what was that turning point for you?
Yeah, I was drifting through most of my 20s. I was like spending all my time watching sports and partying. I didn't get anywhere in my career as a result. Funny enough, there were decisions I made along the way that were good, mostly good, some bad. When I really woke up was in 2016 when I heard a podcast interview just like this with a man named Hal Elrod, who wrote the book The Miracle Morning, and I bought that book and read it, and that was the first time I got into personal development. And it completely changed my life. I started getting really serious about who I am and where I want to go and what I want to do. A lot of self-reflection, a lot more time learning, reading books, listening to podcasts, started going to conferences, joining other people's communities and masterminds and hiring coaches and being willing to actually invest money in that stuff. And it just was absolute game changer. It, allowed me to leave the corporate job I was in, which I worked for a great company with a great culture. I just found out that I personally have a strong desire to be an entrepreneur, to run my own business. I'm one of those people that's kind of unemployable. I don't really like working for other people. It took me a long time to figure that out. That's not for everybody, right? This is about figuring out who you are, discovering who you are and what you want to do. And I went on that journey, and then I just started connecting with more and more people, learning more and more, seeing what other people are doing and saying, okay, I want to learn. I want to try that. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to, go to this conference. I'm going to start, creating content on LinkedIn, whatever it is, shifting my business. And I've really just more and more take ownership and realize I know where I want to go. I know I want to make a big impact. I know I want to write a book one day. And then when that idea came, all right, let me learn as much as I can about self-publishing a book and make it as successful as possible. And by the way, we've been talking a lot about networking and connections. I got an email this morning from I've been hearing from a bunch of different people, other authors who were saying this is one of the best book launches they've ever seen because there's been so much fanfare and other people posting about it and stuff like that. It's all because of all the connections I've made, because I've been connecting with so many people over the years, giving value to them, supporting other people with their books, with their podcasts, jumping in and going and as soon as a friend or anybody I know releases a podcast or a book, I buy it and I go leave a review on Amazon or on iTunes or whatever I can to support other people. And I'm starting to see that come back to me now. So many people are posting about this book and sharing about it. I haven't asked any of them to do it. And I'm so grateful. It's overwhelming. I'm so grateful. But if I want to explain it in order to give advice to other people who are listening right now, it's because I've been connecting with them and just making friends and giving value to others. And then when I needed it, they showed up for me. And it's been amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I think, for most people, again, it's they don't really see even the power of something like LinkedIn in terms of just being able to make those micro connections. And I look at it like the smaller connections you make each day. I'm like at the beginning of my journey. I've only been doing this for a year, and I think it's inspiring to see someone like you who's dedicated so much time in just connecting and giving back to people. But obviously, it was a no-brainer, in terms of being able to promote your book on the live air on my LinkedIn Live. I'm like, there's no question there because of the relationship that we built, but then also just knowing your content and just knowing what you're about. So I think that's huge for people out there. I know. Let's see. Thurston says, nope, they don't at all. I'm not sure. Thurston, you've been going off in the comments, which is awesome, man. I really appreciate everything. I feel like
Mike saying hot seat is resplendent.
Yeah, you got I got to look that up. What? Yeah. So, all right, man. So I'm curious, what's next for you this year? I mean, what do you do after you've written a book like that? I mean, to me, that's a milestone for most people. So what
the year, man?
Yeah. So what you have anything else going on in terms of events, virtual events or anything like that?
Yeah. So nothing else major in 2020. I have, I guess by general standards, I've done a lot this year. I hosted an in-person conference in January, which seems like a million years ago. Where people were actually hugging and shaking hands and stuff in Sonoma, California, with a friend of mine named Bennett Phillips. We had about 150 people there. It was awesome. We had really great speakers. I completely pivoted my business. I launched a membership community. I hosted a virtual summit, the Talent Development Virtual Summit in September, which had almost 2,000 people attend. And now I have written and published a book in 2020. So I feel like I've done quite a bit this year. This book is so important to me. It needs my attention, I think, for the rest of the year. So I'm going to keep working on marketing this, connecting with people, getting into people's hands, connecting with clients. I'm also creating a corporate learning program from this book. And so, I want to get it into more companies and run programs to help employees stop drifting and take control of their future and own their careers. But I actually did some planning yesterday. I went through a planning session to think about where am I going in 2021, especially in Q1. And I'm actually focusing my whole brand around this book now. So it's kind of it's a big pivot, but I see so much potential to help people and build a business that's the direction I'm going in. So I plan on launching a course and a community, probably hosting another virtual summit in January or February to help people take ownership of their careers. And I'd love to have you involved in that, Joel. And because that's so much fun, just bringing so many people together, and then just trying to make as big of an impact as I can and see where that goes. I do have ideas for other books, and I'll probably maybe even write another one next year. It's a lot of work.
I'm guessing that it's a lot of work to post on LinkedIn every day, let alone writing a book, posting on LinkedIn
every day. My gosh, yeah, it is. It really is.
So what about the podcast? Because did the podcast come first, or is it for Own Your Career, Own Your Life? Is that?
So my podcast, I just changed it to that. So my original podcast used to be called The Entrepreneur Hot Seat. It was all about entrepreneurship because I wanted to become an entrepreneur. So I wanted to learn as much as I could. Then when I decided a year or two in that I was really more interested in personal development, a lot of different things. I didn't want to just be about entrepreneurship. I changed it, and the podcast became the Andy Storch Show, which was, all about personal brand, what's going on in my journey, interviewing whoever I want on topics of personal development, things like that. By the way, side note, if you're interested in building a podcast and a brand, there are trade-offs to doing things like that. I think when people see something called like the Andy Storch Show, like, wow, that's really cool. That's personal brand. But there's also no way that anybody's going to find it unless they know who I am, right? Like there's no searchability to that. Whereas my other podcast, the Talent Development Hot Seat, people find it all the time because they're putting in talent development in iTunes, and then they find it and they start listening to the podcast. So anyway, the Andy Storch Show is changing as of this week and becoming the Own Your Career, Own Your Life podcast. It was supposed to be going live yesterday with the first episode, but I kind of screwed up and forgot that I needed to record a new intro and all this stuff, and just didn't get it in time. I'm like the least organized person. Just didn't get it done in time. Which, there's lessons to go along with that. Like I should have prepared more, but at the same time, like what I remind myself sometimes, like I'm talking to my assistant and I'm like, we need to get this up. And then I'm like, nobody's really waiting for this. Like, it's fine if it goes next week. It's just like with a LinkedIn post. Like I want to post every day. And sometimes you put pressure and you're like, oh my God, it's 5 p.m. and I haven't posted on LinkedIn. Like nobody's waiting for it. It's fine. You can post tomorrow. Give yourself a little bit of grace. I mean, you want the accountability, but give yourself some grace too. It's not the end of the world.
Totally. And Liam just jumped on here too. Do you know Liam?
What's up, man? Yeah, I kind of know Liam. We've connected on LinkedIn, chatted a bit. He's a good dude.
Yeah. So I know he's got a live show as well. So he might be a good person to connect up with as well. But Ben, I love all the things you're involved in. I did see the virtual summit as well. I mean, you had a really, really nice lineup of speakers as well.
Yeah.
And I know, like, even for the promotion for that, like I was seeing it everywhere. So I think, like, when it comes to promotion, man, you got plenty of people that want to promote you, which says a lot about who you are as well, which is
thank you.
Awesome.
And it's relationships and getting help. And that was another huge relationship building opportunity because I put that virtual summit on. I got 32 speakers, all kind of big name speakers in the talent development world. And it allowed me to get on and interview each and every single one of them on Zoom and either build a new relationship or reinforce a relationship. And, I'm giving them a platform, and I didn't require any kind of promotion. It just said, hey, would you please, promote this? And some of them are speakers and totally get it. Like they couldn't wait to help promote it. Some others are not used to it. So I had to kind of remind them a couple times, like, hey, would you go post and, put this out there? But all of them, like, just furthered the relationships. I got endorsements for my book from some of them and just all kinds of like really great support. It was that virtual summit was also a ton of work. But I think it was well worth it to build the brand too.
What platform did you do that on, out of curiosity?
So I follow a guy named Mark Wade. He's hosted a lot of virtual summits, and he has his own software he created called virtualsummits.com. And I went through his training program and used his software, and it's basically made for hosting virtual summits, but there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, I know. I did I was involved in one maybe it was 3 or 4 months ago, and they had like avatars and 3D stuff. It was just cool to see. It's cool to see like what different
I've
people.
seen some of that stuff, and I don't know if you follow or connected with Matt Burns on LinkedIn. Matt's up in Canada. He's in the kind of the HR space as well, technology space. He just hosted a global HR summit that was all about virtual reality. It was pretty cool, and he spoke on my summit as well. So yeah, man, there's some good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I want to be sensitive of your time here too. I know we're running too close to the top of the hour, but I'm the one thing I wanted to touch upon too is like, how do you become a part of like your group? Like you mentioned the group that you can be a part of. Like how are you running that? Like what platform is that on?
So the talent development community I run right now, the talent development think tank. Honestly, that one's been a struggle. So I have about 65 members in there, not huge, but it's been growing over time. And I've been trying to figure out the right online platform for people to connect with. We have a Zoom call every Wednesday, and that works really well. People love it. I mean, that's all the value they need, but I wanted to provide a place where people can connect and chat with each other in between calls. And that's been a real struggle. I started with Facebook because that's the most engaging platform as far as I'm concerned, but most of them told me they're not on Facebook. A lot of corporate people say they're not, or they don't like going on it during the day, or it's even blocked at work or whatever. So I tried LinkedIn, even knowing that LinkedIn groups are terrible. And of course it flopped because LinkedIn groups are terrible. They don't show up in your feed, so nobody ever sees it. And so right now I'm using a third-party platform called circle.so that is built for membership communities. And I like it, but I'm still not getting people there. And I think that's more my fault. I haven't really been pushing them to come there and bookmark it and that sort of thing. So it's honestly still a work in progress. I've been involved in other people's communities. I'm still building this. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go with the next one I build. If anyone has any advice, reach out to me and let me know. I'm thinking about trying Slack because I think that might actually work the best. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet.
Sorry, I just reading one of these comments there.
See, I love Facebook, and the membership communities I pay to belong to are on Facebook, and they're really well run. They keep the crap out, and it's just very, very engaging. The problem is a lot of people don't want to go to Facebook, which is totally fine. It's understandable. So I need to create something that will get them there.
And then Liam made a great point too. It's observed that LinkedIn doesn't.
It's mind-blowing.
I wonder. I kind of wonder why that. I mean, I've seen some success for people with LinkedIn groups.
Yeah,
but it's. I just think engagement in social media is really interesting for people because there's still so much of a population that's just really afraid to engage, even if it's in a smaller group. And it's. I think it comes from almost like a misinterpretation of what social media is, where it's just literally an extension of who you are, so you can communicate in that same type of way. But I think we're still, I think for a lot of people, it's just they haven't necessarily grown up, or they don't really get it. I still think there's a large portion of people that don't get it.
Yeah, you're right. And that's one of the things I tell people when you're thinking about creating content. Like, oh, there's so much content out there. Yeah, but it's still a very small percentage of people that are actually creating it. Most people are just
super small.
And the other thing is, when it comes to building relationships, is meet people where they are. I have a couple of friends who, when I post something on social media, one guy he'll send me a direct message and say, hey, actually I have a few like this. I don't feel comfortable commenting on things on social media, so I wanted to send you a direct message to let you know my thoughts. That's cool. Let's have a conversation. And I'm like, dude, don't worry about it, man. I'll meet you where you are. If you want to have a conversation directly, that's cool. If you want to comment, that's cool. Whatever works for you. I'm not going to judge you. But I'm going to put that stuff out there so that we can start these conversations.
Yeah, and it's funny with Facebook as well, because I do think that like the news feed, obviously, depending on who you're connected to, can be, it can be kind of a toxic place, but you actually have control over it. So it's easy to hit unfollow. It's easy to actually tailor whatever it is. It's same with LinkedIn. It's easy to tailor the information you're getting by just following, unfollowing.
Algorithm works.
The algorithm really
talks about it all the time. Like, can you make your algorithm work for you? If you don't like and engage in the negative crap that you don't want to see, it eventually goes away. I mean, somehow survived this crazy election cycle we just got through without hardly ever seeing any political posts in my feed, and
wow.
every day. And it's because I just ignore that stuff. And eventually I think Facebook was like, yeah, he doesn't want to see it, and just took it out of his feed and out of my feed. And like, same thing everywhere else. Like, the algorithm works. It works for you. You got to tell it what you want to see.
Yeah, totally. And I think, Facebook groups for a business owner, I mean, I think Facebook groups are a great way to really build that community. I know that, I don't know if you heard of Patreon. Is that it? Patreon?
Yeah.
I know Patreon seems to be a good one too. But awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on here, and I appreciate both the copies of the book too.
Yeah.
Just so I know, because I'm probably going to gift one of the books. Like, who would be like the ideal person? Obviously everybody, but like, is there anybody who you're like specifically think like, yeah, if you know someone who's like this, they're going to benefit the most from this book? Like, who would that be?
Well, I think like you said, everybody can benefit from reading this book. But when I have my target avatar in mind, or the person who I think really could benefit from this book, people, corporate professionals earlier in their careers, 20s or 30s, really looking to get the most out of your career, the most out of life, and achieve big goals. It's all there. So think about who you know in your network. Or, Joel, I think that book would make for a great giveaway on LinkedIn. You could do a post, ask people a question.
That's a good, I was thinking about doing that.
And then pick a random commenter or the best comment tomorrow to book out. It's a signed copy of this amazing book on your career, on your life. So, we're all about creating content and engagement. Come on, Joel, get out there.
100%, man. No, I love that. See, that's, I need some creativity help every now and again. So
that's what I was thinking about putting in there.
Well, I really appreciate it, man. I appreciate you taking the time. Appreciate the book too. And I know, I'm sure as soon as I start getting into it and points come across to you, I'll be posting about it. And just appreciate you being willing to engage with everybody out there as well. So Nick, Liam, Thurston, see who else do we have here? I'm sure there's a bunch of other people obviously too that don't want to engage, but that's okay. And then Marilyn as well. Yeah. Debbie, we really appreciate all of you guys. Remember, own your career, own your life, pick it up. And if you're not connected with Andy too, connect with him, send him a note, say, hey, I saw the live show about your book, and you guys can get connected. And I definitely recommend anybody following Andy as well. He's really, really well connected to a lot of leaders, thought leaders, and the events that he puts on as well are, again, it's just like I don't know, star-studded is probably the best way to put it, in terms of just people who really bring high value. So Andy, appreciate it, man. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Joel. You are just a master on LinkedIn and creating amazing content. I love following you. I'm glad we finally got to talk and share this awesome discussion. And I am grateful for this opportunity. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, man. I'm going to end this broadcast. So see you later, everybody. We'll talk soon.